When you hear government shutdown on the news, you probably think of politics, right? Cable news debates, arguments in Congress. But what if the U.S. government is your biggest client? What if they're your only client? Well, for thousands of businesses, a shutdown isn't some distant headline. It's an existential crisis. Today, we're going to unpack the survival guide for what happens when your number one customer just shuts its doors.
So let's just start with a number to set the scale here. 750,000. To put that in perspective, during the 2013 shutdown, that number was actually over 800,000 federal employees sent home. This isn't just some abstract statistic. These are the people who run countless government functions. And when they're told to stay home, well, that's where the ripple effect truly begins.
So, to really get a handle on the impact, we've got to understand the mechanism behind it all. Let's start with what a shutdown actually is and how this whole mess unfolds in the first place.
At its heart, a shutdown is really just a funding gap. When Congress and the White House can't agree on a budget, the legal authority for a lot of federal agencies to spend money just expires. And when the money stops, so do most of their operations. It's as simple and as complicated as that.
Here's where it gets interesting, though. The government doesn't just turn off like a light switch. You've got your essential services. Think the military, air traffic controllers. They keep working, often without getting paid, which is a whole other story. But then all the non-essential functions, we're talking regulatory work, administrative offices, even national parks, they grind to a total halt. And that is where the real problems begin for the businesses that support them.
Okay, so we see this huge government funding problem. But how does that turn into a complete nightmare for a very specific group? Let's zoom in on the thousands of private companies we call government contractors.
Yeah, it's a huge question, right? And we're not just talking about giant defense corporations here. A lot of these are small and medium-sized businesses, family-run shops whose entire livelihood is tied up in supporting one single government agency. So, when the lights go out at that agency, what on earth happens to them?
And this is where you really see the dominoes start to fall. First, the person who's supposed to approve your invoices, they're furloughed, sent home, so boom, payments stop. Then, the project you're working on gets a formal stop work order. So now what? You've got a whole team of people with nothing to do, and you're staring down the barrel of a messy, expensive restart process whenever this thing ends. It's just a perfect storm of financial and operational chaos.
And you know what the absolute worst part is? You have no earthly idea how long it's going to last. Look at this history. It could be a few days, or it could be over a month, like that record-breaking 35-day shutdown. That killer uncertainty, that's what keeps business owners staring at the ceiling at 3 in the morning. You just can't plan for anything.
So you're facing all this chaos. You can't just sit there and cross your fingers, right? Of course not. The smart contractors, the ones who survive, they have a playbook. So let's walk through the 6 crucial steps they take to get through this crisis.
All right, this is the heart of the strategy right here. It all starts with the immediate stuff. You got to dive into your contracts, pore over the fine print, and figure out what your rights actually are. Then you're on the phone, communicating with your government contacts to get official stop work orders. Next, you pivot to managing your resources, your cash, your people. You talk to your own suppliers. And finally, and this is so important, you document every single thing, and you start using this crisis to plan for a stronger future.
If you take away only one thing from this whole playbook, let it be this: document everything. Every single cost, every email, every decision you make because of the shutdown. Why? Because when the government finally opens back up, that pile of documents, that is your only weapon, your only piece of ammunition to file a claim and maybe, just maybe, recover some of your losses. Without it, you've got nothing.
Look, getting through one shutdown is a huge win. But the real goal here isn't just to survive. It's to build a business that's tough enough to handle the next one, and trust me, there is always a next one.
So how do you do that? How do you build that resilience? Well, first, you stop putting all your eggs in one agency's basket. You diversify. Even better, you start looking for business outside the federal government entirely, in the commercial world. And you start treating a shutdown not like a freak accident, but like a predictable risk. You have a plan for it, ready to go at a moment's notice.
When you really zoom out, this story isn't just about government contractors, is it? It's a lesson for any business that's maybe a little too dependent on one single powerful client. It really makes you think. In a world that's this volatile, is having a worst-case scenario plan no longer just a smart idea, but an absolute non-negotiable necessity for survival?